Welcome to the More Than Just a Doctor podcast. I'm your host, Lil Suprenant, MD. I'm a life coach for physicians, a practicing hospitalist, a wife, a mom of 2 boys, a reader, a dancer, a dolphin enthusiast, and all the things. Just like me, you're more than just a doctor, and that's what we're going to talk about each week. Doctor stuff, regular life stuff, and all the things that make life rich and interesting. I'm so glad you're here. Let's get started. All right, everyone, welcome, my friends. I'm your host, Lil Suprenant. This is episode number 12, I think. And today we're going to talk about this shit is hard, and it's okay not to be okay. So this week I had 3 separate conversations with physicians, and the theme was very clear. It was about really hard and terrible things that sometimes happen in our career, not because we've done anything wrong, just in the course of work as a physician, oftentimes things can be really hard. So it came up 3 times in a row, and I thought, well, we need to talk about this on the podcast. So I want to talk a little bit about just some examples. So it's hard and terrible to have multiple young trauma patients die on the table in one call episode. Of course, it's hard to even have one, but I mean, sometimes things get overwhelming of our nervous system and our capacity to process and sort of tolerate and recover. It's hard and terrible to have a patient in the OR for a routine, what was supposed to be a routine case, and they start to crump and you don't know why. And then a series of awful things back to the OR, code, bedside, exploration, terrible. And never any figuring out what went wrong, no ability to say, oh, we should have done this different, we should have seen this coming. Sometimes terrible things just happen and we're in the midst of it. And this shit is hard. It's hard and terrible to have a patient in the OR for a very technically difficult procedure with a complicated diagnosis, and have multiple equipment failures back to back in the same case. And then there's bleeding that wouldn't have happened if things had been equipped better, and the case takes way longer. Then there's another patient waiting, and you're on call for the weekend, so not getting sleep. Like, this shit is hard. It's hard to see fellow human beings visibly in pain. Dyspneic, that's actually a really hard one for me to see still. It's like that triggers me to see someone very short of breath. It's hard to visually see someone deformed by disease, tissue dying. We're human beings. Our human brains are incredibly visual. So even if we're prepared career-wise to take care of this and see this, it still impacts us on even a subconscious level. And ideally, there's some amount that we can take and process and rest and recover. So I just want to say, really, the whole point of this podcast, I am going to have some tips about how to deal with some of this stuff. But the whole point really is nothing is wrong with you. If you're shaken up, if you're feeling overwhelmed, if you're doubting yourself when these things happen, especially when they happen in volume. Other things that make us particularly vulnerable to having a hard time processing hard things is when there's a lot of it, when things are a shift, is when there's a long duration of it. Say we've had a really long shift, or we're on a call and a bunch of things came in sort of more than usual. And when you have to have your nervous system see and process and take care of multiple really hard and bad things, like you sort of can overwhelm your system. Too many days in a row on service without that break to like really rest and recover. Sleep deprivation is a huge part of what makes things hard to process. So when we've been on call, or maybe we're just having trouble sleeping for other reasons, that makes processing what is legitimately a really hard thing to deal with even harder. So, what to do about all this? Again, back to the main thing is like, there's nothing wrong with you, and it's okay not to be okay. It's okay to admit to yourself and the team that this is hard. So one of the things I really don't want you to do, and I want to be very conscious of this, if you ever catch yourself doing this, please don't belittle yourself and the situation when things are hard and you're feeling it. Don't do that to yourself. It is not helpful, it's not kind, and it does not help the patients. So if you have the capacity, the best thing to do is rest and recover as much as you can. Add in extra time to have quiet or something restorative to you, some time in nature, sleep. Obviously, if you haven't gotten sleep, sleep as much as you can. And why I'm saying as much as you can, I'm a physician too. I'm completely aware that sometimes, taking a break or taking a day off is a luxury that we may not have. But oftentimes we can rearrange things. We can defer an elective case. We can not pick up extra shifts. We can say, hey, I need a break. Can you cover me for a while? A lot of times there's some break to be had if we're willing to admit that we need some rest and recovery. The next thing to do, and this is a theme in all my episodes, is share this. Like, talk to someone about the experience. It was hard also for the nurse involved, the OR tech, the respiratory therapist, all the members of the team. Typically, it's usually not just you as the physician involved when shit's hitting the fan. Like, it shakes up those people too. We're all trained to be professionals. We know how to handle it. We know what to do, but witnessing terrible things happening to humans is hard. So it's a good opportunity to just say, hey, this was terrible, whatever needs to be said, but share that with the team. Share with your colleagues. Tell people you went through this terrible thing. A friend, a colleague, your spouse. And then lastly, I want to give you a visualization that I use. I use this one not so much after something terrible has happened. This is what I use when I'm in the midst of like a super busy shift and I feel like inputs of very urgent things are coming in, like multiple pages of people who need a rapid response or codes or admissions, like boom, boom, boom. And I sort of start to feel overwhelmed, or a higher percent than usual of very high acuity stuff going on. I like to come out and visualize the whole United States and all the hospitals. Like, I'm looking down from I don't even know how big of a view that would be. All the hospitals in the United States and all the crazy diagnoses going on at the same time. Like, how many, STEMIs are happening at the same time, or big PEs, or, traumas, all that stuff happening at the same time. What that does for me is gives me a feeling of a little more small, like I'm just a part in this, it gives a little bit of space. So I find that useful. You may not find that useful. And then one of the things I say to myself is, this is hard work that needs to be done. I might as well be the one to do it. For some reason, that's a helpful phrase for me. I think just admitting on the front end, like, this is hard work, but it needs to be done, and I may as well be the one to do it. Like, I know how to do the work. It doesn't, the other thing about the visualization, part of, I think, what's calming about it is all these things are happening, like whether I'm there or not. So even if I'm at home and I don't know about like this particular rapid response, like it's happening anyway, and it's happening all over the place. So I may as well be in there and take care of the one that's in front of me. And another phrase I'll use sometimes is, I'm doing the best I can with what I have in this moment. So a couple things that I kind of have at the ready to help myself when I'm dealing with hard things. So that's what I have for you today. But the big message is, this shit is hard sometimes. It's okay not to be okay. And be kind to yourself. See you next week. Thanks so much for joining me today. If you like this episode, you're going to love working with me directly. Sign up for email updates from me in the show notes. I'll send you a fun email every week called Friday Favorites. Everyone loves it. Or if you're ready to get started creating your rich and interesting life, book a free consultation with me to explore working together one-on-one. I can't wait to meet you. You'll find these links and other resources in the show notes. See you next week.